You know, back in my day, we had to walk uphill, both ways, just to kill an army of do-gooders. And you think you all could just shoot?
Magic.
And I remember the first dual land I ever seen when I ever started playing Magic was Bayou. And so it's my favorite dual land. I know that's some nerdy shit, but I was a very little kid. I was in grade school. It was the first dual land I ever seen. I was like, "Oh, what is this?" And the little text box with the green and black was just so like cool looking to me. And I never seen one before, and I think that would be fun to build.
My first dual land was a Tundra, and I bought it for $10 or $11, and I was so proud of it, and I still have it. But I remember just kind of like staring at it all day when my friends and I were just hanging around, and I could tell they were almost getting annoyed, like, Jesus, just put that away, put that away. I just thought it was really neat. But anyway,
You remember
okay.
your first box?
Yeah, I mean, it was that Emerald that we got. I mean, I've never had a Mox. That was,
Dude,
yeah.
the first Mox I ever got was a Mox Emerald, and it was in probably 1995. And I took all these sports cards I had that are worthless today, completely worthless. Like the King Griffey Jr. rookie card from '89 Upper Deck, that was worth a few $100s at the time. Now it's still only worth like $50 at the most. And like I traded all these cards that add up to maybe $50 today, and I got a Mox Emerald, and I got it from Matt Sports Trading Cards on Fort Street in Wyandotte.
I'm sitting there buying boxes of Ice Age, right? Homelands. I'm buying boxes of Homelands, and I could have been buying Moxes for that price.
We interrupt this program for this public service message. Homelands was awesome. So saith Vince Neil. Joven from Homelands.
Because the boxes were still $110 back then. Even look at the inflation on these things. It hasn't been that terrible over the course of all these decades, and I'm buying fucking Homelands. But meanwhile, the Mox Emerald is $110. Like, oh my God, so much money for a single card, And we've talked about this before, like when I first started, like at Revise, Black Lotuses were $12. And I'm having a comic book store guy explain to me what the card is and everything else. And I'm sitting there blowing money on like a White Knight and a Royal Assassin. It's just stupid.
I was buying like I just was a little kid, and I'm looking, I was 12 years old, I think, maybe 13 at the most. And I was looking at like Scarecrow, the art on Scarecrow from the Dark, and I'm like, dude, that looks so sweet. So
Yeah.
I bought that for like $5 or something, when there's like fucking dual land sitting there for $5.
I want to Gaia's Liege on a Force of Nature. I mean, basically, a Force of Nature was pretty much on parity with dual lands for the longest time. Shivan
Yeah.
Dragon.
Yeah, for everybody.
Right.
That's why crawl worms are such a big deal, like to find in mint condition in alpha, because crawl worm was like, back in the day, it was like, oh, creatures are everything. A 6/4, nobody understood the game, and it was just so new, and everybody was kidding.
And someone said, "Oh, let's do this black vice thing, and let's start brain geysering our opponent." And then like creatures were dead. No one ever used a freaking creature anymore. Having a 6-mana creature in your deck, back at that time was terrible. The only creatures people played anymore were Urg Raiders and the Juggernaut, Iron Claw Orcs kind of thing. I mean, anytime I do a Type 1 tournament, you would never see people get into the semifinals, even like white weenies and stuff. Always these control decks or some sort of white, black, red, speed, something or other, trying some mini land kill. It was a different time. Creatures like, nobody played creatures until alliances. I mean, really, it was hard.
And the first deck that I really played that was just like kind of competitive was just it was 4 Dark Ritual, 4 Black Knight, 4 Hypnotic Spectre, 4 Drain Life, 4 Hymn to Turok, 4 Strip Mine, 4 Mistress Factories, whatever else. And like Black Knight was so good because you couldn't target it with Terror, and it had protection from white, so you couldn't target it with the Swords of Plowshares.
Yep.
So at that time, it was so good,
people didn't. Hymn to Turak was actually out for a while before people really understood that with Hippie on how good a discard deck was. You know, Necropotence, Necropotence, whatever you want to say, wasn't that an Ice Age card or something like that? And
maybe the best. It's definitely one of the top 5 cards ever printed that don't involve mana.
Right, but I mean, it was when you could have, but before Necropotence came out, but just with Fallen Empires, right? There was a total legit. Fallen Empires had lots of other discard. Those thralls, you could run them over and then make your opponent drop 3 cards. You know, on top of the Hymn to Turx. Yeah, that was. You had the Mind Stab Thralls. That was a tough card if you didn't do it right, especially on control decks. It was cheap. Yep. Your Dark Ritualing is throwing it out there. But you're right, you know, but no one was really looking at that. And then, but also back then, we didn't know all the net decks. Like the decks, it's not how it is now. Like everyone can't wait to be the first one to like take credit for inventing a new deck, right? Like back in the day, it was actually considered rude. This is funny. It was actually considered rude to like copy somebody's deck. If you went to a tournament and you copied the deck that somebody else was using, people were like, dude, you just totally copied what I did. Like no one would ever remotely think that way anymore.
And that was that mono black deck. I remember it was the first time I kind of started grasping the concepts of Magic, like to have card advantage, have more cards than your opponent had.
And Mind Twist was not banned for a long time. You could stick that in there. Actually, you know why it got banned is because someone had a championship deck with 4 of them. It wasn't even restricted.
That card was so sick. That might be the most busted card ever printed, really.
And it was discard the cards at random. Right?
Oh my God. I forgot. Right? Until you just said random, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was destroy it. And that's what it was. I should look it up. Someone made a championship deck with 4 Mind Twists, and then they restricted it, and it didn't matter. People were demonic tutoring for it, and they just said no. And then they just banned it completely. That was funny.
And I just love black because it was so dark and evil and felt cool, you know. That was
look at it, I say that was the first AI artwork because it had weird hands. It's got like 4 hands or something on it, you know. Yeah, it's all like weird. But Mind Twist, oh, that is so hilarious, these broken cards.
Thank you for taking our trip down memory lane. Do please like and subscribe and help me grow my Exorcist army.
Magic.